you, everyone. I want to tell a story tonight about a very glorious day that I had just over 20 years ago. It was June 1991. My wife and I had just been married for a couple of months, and we had the opportunity to go to my ancestral homeland of Ireland. And we had that opportunity because a friend of ours was working over there on a 2-year stint or so. And he said, look, once I get settled, come over, use my house as your base, do whatever you want, right? Ireland's yours. Too good to pass up that trip, right? So we decided to go over, and we drove up to New York, and we took a red-eye flight across to the island. And we got there, you know, what was no sleep for us, but was the middle of the next afternoon, and Paul met us at the airport, and he drove us down to County Cork, where he was living and working at the time. And he is a very bright man, and he is a man of the world because he was traveling internationally. And he said, here's the trick. If you don't want to experience jet lag, we have to go out tonight and drink a lot. You stay up. You can't sleep now. And when you sleep tonight, you wake up tomorrow, you'll be fine, right? So we drove back down, and we went into the town of Kinsale, and we had a wonderful time. And we stayed up late that night. And then we went back to the house he was renting and living in a little town called Crosshaven. And on Saturday, we spent the day at the beach, and it was a beautiful day at the beach, or the cliffs at Kinsale, Old Head at Kinsale, laying on the rocks. And Saturday night, we were going to go down to the pub down the hill. And while we're getting ready to go out, and there's some other friends around and people around, Jody said, hey, Paul, let's talk about church tomorrow morning. And Paul looked at us and said, yeah, I really don't go to church anymore. And I thought, no, we understand that, but where do we go? He said, oh, yeah, it's up the hill, but we'll find out at the pub when it is. I don't know anything about it. So we go down to the pub, and we're having a good time, and oh, yeah, we find out the time, whatever time it was there. And we say, how do you get there? And the locals all started laughing at us, like, what do you mean, how do you get there? There's these little roads in this town of Crosshaven. They all lead to the church. They all go up the hill, and they're baked into the town. God owns the property, I think, right? Because as you're walking up the hill, you see no one's got rectangular property lines. The line weaves through where the road goes up to the church, and your property line stops, and the other guy starts in the same squiggly line on the other side of it, right? This is really cool, right? It's not like a town hit critical mass and they pop a church down in it. It's the town grew up around this church, and that was really cool to see. And the next morning, Jody and I get up, and we weave our way up the hill. And we get to the churchyard, and there's these girls wearing their white confirmation or first communion dresses, right? And they got their hairs and the doilies, and they look beautiful, and they're holding hands. And we're watching this, and it's really, really nice. And then we go into this dark old church. And I remember going in there. There's no noise, and there's not much light. And the stained glass, you know, the light coming through the windows, you see dust particles. And I'm thinking, wow, these things are centuries old, these dust particles floating around here. And I'm sitting in the silence, and it is truly glorious in taking this all in. And I told my mother before we went, I said, I'll write a poem for every town we go to. So this poem I'm about to recite is called In Crosshaven. Choose any winding walkway from harbor to hilltop, where time has decided the border shall stand. They all lead one place to the yard of St. Bridget's, where flowers sway softly and schoolgirls hold hands. Glance back toward the harbor, watch the town folk ascending, smiling and weaving while making their climb. The moment stands out like the sunlight enhancing, more a moment in history, less a moment in time. Push through oak doors into solemn and silence, stained glass-tinted dust playing tricks for your eyes. You long for the silence, and you need that silence, for out of that silence shall angel songs rise. How long have you traveled, years, miles, or sorrows, to find yourself kneeling in this very place? The voices of angels, the silence, the red light upon you, the silence becoming your own Father's face. There's an afterword to this story as Jody and I ran down the hill to tell our friend Paul about the beautiful choir of children that sang there. It was the girls in their white dresses that went up to the loft, and the sound that came out of them was amazing. And we told him about it, and he looked at us and he said, yeah, I really don't go to church much anymore, right? And I thought that was the end of that part of the story. But he told me a couple years later, he said, because of that story and the way you told it, every now and then, if I was awake on a Sunday morning, I'd go up the hill hoping to hear those girls sing. And he said, I never heard it. At one point, he considered that his mother and I conspired this lie about little girls singing in order to get him to go to church every now and then. And it wasn't true. But right at the end of his stay in Ireland, one Sunday morning, he made up his way up the hill, and he saw the girls in their white dresses, and he thought this could be different, right? And he went inside, and he got to hear firsthand the same glorious day I hope that you all enjoyed secondhand. Thank you.